Hello and welcome everyone. We Weeb online, and today I'm gonna continue the story Naruto and the Loli Kurama, part 5. This will be the last chapter, and I have skipped one chapter because it contained bit of a madness. So please go through it from the link given in the comment section. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
For the first time in his life, he considered himself fortunate, but how could he not? Life was treating him far too well. Kyumi had been far more nurturing than she had ever been since that Christmas night, when he first saw her cooking breakfast for him. He nearly stabbed himself in the thigh with a kunai because he mistook it for genjutsu. Kyumi would now prepare him breakfast every other day before he awoke. On other days, she'd stay in bed with him and they'd have a good morning romp. It was one of those other days. Naruto leaned forward, watching Kyumi take a bottle of sake from the fridge. Kyumi had to reach up on her tippy toes to see the view, emphasizing the slight muscle in her thighs and back. There was something strangely enticing about her just standing there in front of the fridge. He would have shrugged at the thought, but he was simply too tired. "Don't you think we should start the day already, Kyumi?" Naruto inquired, his chest heaving slightly from fatigue. Kyumi motioned for him to wait while she uncorked the bottle of sake and drank from it. After what must have been a 5-second pull, Kyumi exhaled a relieved sigh and replaced the bottle in the fridge, closing it. She smirked at Naruto as she turned her head. "Are you tired yet?" Kyumi asked, putting a finger to her lips. "I mean, if you want to go for another round." Naruto replied, tilting his head side to side. "But it's almost afternoon and I haven't eaten anything yet." Kyumi sighed. "Fine. If you want, I can prepare some food." "Well, do you want to make me some food?" Naruto asked, tilting his head to the side. "I'm feeling a little sluggish. I don't mind spooning on the bed," Kyumi replied, stretching her arms with a grunt. "But if you're hungry, I'll make you some food," hummed Naruto as he lowered his head back onto the pillow. "I think I can wait a little longer before I have to eat." Tilting his head back up, he caught Kyumi's smile as she jumped back onto the bed and onto his chest. "Oof, yeah," exclaimed Kyumi, snuggling up against the crook of his neck. "I call Big Spoon. And how is that supposed to work?" chuckled Naruto. "I've reconsidered. I simply want to cuddle," purred Kyumi as she ran her hands over his chest. "You really enjoy cuddling, don't you?" "Only with you," Kyumi replied quietly. "The thought of cuddling with anyone else disgusts me." "Ha." Naruto snorted as he reached down to take Kyumi's hand in his. "At least I don't have to worry about you cheating on me." "HMPH," Kyumi grumbled back. "I would never do such a thing." "What would you do if I couldn't stay with you forever?" Naruto asked, craned his neck back to catch a glimpse of Kyumi out of the corner of his eye. Kyumi hummed quietly as she considered her response. "Well, I'd just spend the rest of my life in this world destroying everything in a blind, furious rage. And when the entire world is destroyed, I'll rebuild it, only to destroy it again." Kyumi nodded. "Sounds like you." Naruto replied with a chuckle. "Well, what else would you expect from me?" smirked Kyumi at him. Naruto snorted before breaking out in laughter. Honestly, that's exactly what I expect from you," Naruto stammered between giggles. "That's right up your alley, Kyumi." "It's funny," Kyumi shrugged, "because a few months ago, if I said anything like that, you'd get angry at me." "Well, I guess I changed," Naruto said as he turned around to face her, transforming their spooning into a face-to-face embrace. "You, too, have evolved. You haven't hit me in nearly 2 months. I haven't yelled at you either," Kyumi remarked thoughtfully. "I guess I've just really warmed up to you." "I guess I've warmed up to you as well," Naruto said with a smile. Kyumi returned the smile. "So, then." She then leaned in close and kissed his neck. "I've reconsidered. Let's try it again." "Couldn't stop yourself, could you?" Naruto chuckled as he ran his hands down Kyumi's hips. "Nope," Kyumi replied simply as she kissed her way up his jaw. "Ah," snorted Naruto as he gently squeezed Kyumi's rear, eliciting a quiet mew from her. "Honestly, you're hopeless sometimes." "Whatever. Ravish me already." "All right, okay. MMPH. There was an unexpected knock on the door. They both shot glances over towards the door. Naruto simply gave it a puzzled look, while Kyumi glared at it with absolute daggers. "Whoever is standing behind that door, I'm going to murder them," Kyumi stated as she slid off Naruto and conjured herself some clothing, one of her eyes twitching. Naruto sucked quietly. "So, if you end up killing them, just make sure nobody finds out." "Okay, Uo. I'm going to make an example of them," Kyumi said, fists balled and stomping towards the door. "I'll string them in the middle of the village by their intestines. So, then, when they kick us out of the village, don't say I didn't warn you." Naruto shrugged his shoulders in response. Kyumi slammed the door open, almost ripping it off the hinges, only to have to look up to avoid staring at the intruder's chest. She immediately scowled when she realized Jiraiya had interrupted them. The only thing that kept her from killing the perverted ape right away was that it would have made Naruto sad. "What do you want?" Kyumi asked coldly, folding her arms and puffing out her cheeks in irritation. "Well, that's one polite way to address someone," Jiraiya shrugged sarcastically. "I kinda need to talk to Naruto." "What are you going to talk about?" Kyumi asked, her eyes narrowed. "Well, since this is also about you, you can join in on the conversation," Jiraiya replied, smiling at Kyumi. Jiraiya continued to speak with a smile on his face. "However, in all seriousness, this is very important." "Well, I suppose I can make time for you because it's important." There was a brief silence. Why are you still standing in the doorway?" Jiraiya inquired, his brow furrowed. "I'm waiting for Naruto to get dressed." Kyumi replied simply, dropping her arms back to her sides. "Why wouldn't Naruto be dressed? It's almost afternoon." "Oh my goodness," Jiraiya exclaimed as he clapped his hands. His bizarre delight was quickly met with a slap across the face. It wasn't the trademark Kyumi slap of death, but rather a regular slap that left a red mark on his cheek. Again, killing him would irritate Naruto. "Can it, you disgusting cock ape?" sneered Kyumi, glaring at him. Jiraiya flinched, rubbing his sore cheek. "Okay. All right, can I come in right now?" Kyumi kept staring, but turned her head slightly to the side to peer behind her. "Naruto, have you finished your dressing?" Kyumi said as she held her hands in front of her mouth. "Almost. I just need to put my shirt on," replied Naruto. "Give me a second." He says to give him a second. Kyumi shrugged before returning her gaze to Jiraiya. Jiraiya mumbled, The two awkwardly stood there waiting for Naruto to change. Jiraiya tried whistling to relieve the tension, but it only made things more awkward as Kyumi shushed him. This resulted in yet another moment of silence until Jiraiya attempted to break it. "So, how is Naruto in the sack?" asked Jiraiya unexpectedly, prompting Kyumi to widen her eyes and blush. "Be better than you, of course," Kyumi replied, defensively wrapping her arms and tails around herself. "Someone better than me in bed," exclaimed Jiraiya, widening his eyes. "Impossible. In bed, no one beats Master Jiraiya. I bet he lasts longer than you, too." Kyumi mocked as she stepped away from him. "No, there's no way someone lasts longer than me," Jiraiya retorted, shaking his head. "I've mastered the ways of the bedroom before Naruto was even born." "I have my doubts. You still haven't mastered the art of seduction. I saw you trying to get into the pants of that blonde bimbo," Kyumi argued, her eyes narrowing even more as she continued to stare at the man. "Tsunade isn't a bimbo blonde. She's far too intelligent to be a bimbo. Wisdom to not let you into her pants." "Take that back," exclaimed Jiraiya. "No," Kyumi exclaimed, making a rude face at him. "I don't take back what I say. Especially when I say it to monkeys." "How the hell do you know I've been sleeping with Naruto?" huffed Kyumi angrily. Jiraiya's face seemed to lose all of its vivaciousness as soon as she said that. Then he turned pale, almost as if he'd just come down with a random illness. "Well, I just had a hunch," Jiraiya stammered as he tried to explain himself awkwardly. "Sounds like a bunch of bull," Kyumi remarked, her brow furrowed. Hey, I'm here." I dressed up. Naruto walked into view, prompting Kyumi to turn her head to look at him and Jiraiya to breathe a sigh of relief. "Darling," exclaimed Kyumi as she rushed up to him and hugged him. "Thank God you're finally here. I almost puked when I realized I had to entertain that disgusting guest over there." Jiraiya noticed a twitch in one of his eyes. "Jiraiya isn't disgusting," Naruto said, raising his gaze from Kyumi to Jiraiya. "I mean, he's perverted, but he's not disgusting." "Gee, thanks for your staunch defense, Naruto," Jiraiya responded with a deadpan expression. Naruto chuckled. "What? I have to be honest, then, Naruto. Drop the transformation." What?" Naruto widened his eyes and stammered. I knew you were watching us," Kyumi exclaimed as she drew away from Naruto and pointed an accusing finger at Jiraiya. "I'm sure you have some strange device that you use to spy on us from afar." "Okay. Whatever," Jiraiya replied, throwing his hands in the air. "Can't I just come in and tell you two what I need to tell you two? Why do you make things so difficult?" "I think it's because she despises you." Naruto shrugged. "Yeah, that's pretty much it," Kyumi agreed with a nod. "Can I just say what I came to say?" Jiraiya sighed. "Speak your piece then," Kyumi said, crossing her arms. "All right then," Jiraiya said, taking a breath. "But may I come in first?" "NMMPH," Kyumi exclaimed, only to be cut off when Naruto covered her mouth with his hand. "Yes, please come in. Make yourself at ease." In response, Naruto gave Jiraiya a nervous smile. As Jiraiya sat down on the couch, Kyumi continued to protest. Naruto had to do a lot of head patting to finally calm her down. Kyumi had a habit of acting hopeless at times. Fortunately, he was familiar with a few techniques for keeping her calm and happy. So, what did you want to talk about? Naruto asked, standing in front of Jiraiya. Kyumi snuggled up in front of him. It's related to Itachi and Kasame. Jiraiya replied, raising an eyebrow at Naruto. You know, those two men who attacked you in the hotel a few months ago. Yeah, what about them? Nodded Naruto. It turns out they're part of a group called the Akatsuki. Hey, sounds pretty cheesy. Naruto shrugged, flinching slightly as Kyumi nibbled on his hand. Despite the cheesy name, it's actually a terrorist organization comprised of a few S-ranked ninja. Jiraiya responded, gesticulating with his hands, so I'd be a little more concerned if I were you. Does this have anything to do with me? Naruto asked, tilting his head to the side. Jiraiya nodded and pointed to Kyumi, saying, both of you, what does Akatsuki intend to do with us? Kyumi inquired as she drew Naruto's hand down to rest on her stomach. The Akatsuki intend to kidnap all of the tailed beasts. I have no idea what they plan to do with them, Jiraiya replied before sighing. But they will hatch this plan within 2 years. Why should I be concerned about Akatsuki? It'll be simple to grind them into bone dust, Kyumi responded with a quick HMPH. You were sealed inside Naruto by a ninja, which means you can be beaten, retorted Jiraiya, furrowing his brow as he continued speaking. These are not the kind of ninja you can play around with. Even if you are one of the most powerful things in this world, the Akatsuki are well aware of this, which is why they have assembled the world's strongest ninja to defeat you. Kyumi scowled. Okay, then. So, whelp, what are your plans? Our plan is to get you two out of the village, Jiraiya replied, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. This gives us an advantage. What are our plans after we leave the village? Naruto inquired, his lips curving downward into a frown. Jiraiya exclaimed, well, that is the issue. There's not much I can do outside if you two decide to elope now that the nine-tailed fox is no longer inside of you. I think I'm a little too young to marry, Jiraiya, Naruto replied, a deadpan expression on his face. Kyumi responded with a light punch to the shoulder. Well, Naruto, I think you two just have to keep moving around, Jiraiya explained with a shrug. The best option for the village is for you two to leave. I'm not saying you're not welcome here anymore, but Konoha can't afford another major battle, so until the Akatsuki are dealt with. Do you get the picture? Yeah, I got the idea. Naruto nodded, as she noticed some of the light leave Naruto's eyes. Kyumi frowned. She took his hand in hers and squeezed it gently. Naruto squeezed back as her small move seemed to have the desired effect. When do we have to leave? Sighed Naruto quietly. Tonight would be the best time, Jiraiya replied, frowning. Though it doesn't leave much time for goodbyes, does it, if it's for the best? Naruto shrugged. But what about Naruto's dream? Kyumi asked, her gaze fixed on Jiraiya. He wants to be the Hokage someday. He can always return once the Akatsuki are dealt with, Jiraiya replied, defensively raising his hands. Plus, he's already pretty much a shoo-in for Hokage because Tsunade favors him so much. I'm just a little sad that I'll be away from my friends for such a long time, Naruto said, frowning slightly as he shrugged. I know it stinks, Naruto, but it's the only option, Jiraiya responded as he stood up. I'd pack up if I were you. At midnight, meet me at the gates. I'll get you to a nearby town early in the morning, and then you'll be on your own. All right, then. Jiraiya nodded his head and walked away. There was silence for a moment, until Naruto shuffled over to the couch and sat himself down, looking over at Kyumi. He sighed softly and patted a spot on his lap. Kyumi immediately followed the gesture by approaching him and sitting on his lap. Without saying anything, I'm sorry if I appear sad, but I'm just a little surprised, Naruto said as he patted Kyumi on the head. No, it's fine. I know how important Konoha is to you, Kyumi replied as she snuggled up against him. And I can understand having to move away from one's home. I mean, it's not all that bad, Naruto said, shrugging. I've always wanted to see the world. Kyumi grinned. I know the entire globe like the back of my hand. I'm familiar with all of the interesting landmarks. That sounds nice, Naruto said, his frown gradually reverting to a small smile. When have I ever said anything that didn't sound nice? Kyumi replied, turning her head to reveal Naruto's fangs. You said some pretty harsh things about me when we first met, Naruto snorted. Well, that's unusual. The I was back then is not the same as the I am now, Kyumi stated, her ears bending downward slightly as she apologized to Naruto. I think the only difference between you then and now is that you tolerate me, Naruto chuckled as he ran his fingers through Kyumi's silky red hair. I wouldn't say I tolerate you because, even though I love you, there are times when you irritate me, Kiyumi retorted as she gently pressed her head against Naruto's fingers. I could say the same for you, Kiyumi. Naruto smiled. He then moved his hand away from Kiyumi's head and onto her shoulder. You know what I mean. Now that I think about it, I like the idea of being able to accompany you on your travels. It's almost like a vacation, perhaps even like a honeymoon if we ever get married. Kiyumi remarked with a small smile as she looked at Naruto. You've been talking about marriage a lot more lately. Naruto remarked. Kiyumi slapped him on the back of the head. If I keep bringing it up with you, does that imply I want to marry you? She nearly chuckled as she watched her words sink in. So wait, you want to with me? Naruto's eyes widened as he asked his question. That's the plan, Kiyumi said with a smile, as he leaned back against the couch. Naruto exclaimed, I honestly never imagined myself getting married. I suppose I should consider myself extremely fortunate to have found love at such a young age. You should feel especially fortunate because you found love in me. Kiyumi replied, her smile turning into a smirk. Believe me when I say I'm the luckiest person on the planet. Of course. I believe you, as she continued to speak. A flush developed on her cheeks. After all, Naruto, I love you. Naruto immediately embraced her after she said that. It was a much tighter hug than she was used to. But she accepted it. I love you too, Kiyumi. How long had it been since they had left Konoha? Much longer than a couple of decades. Much more than a few centuries. Maybe even a millennium. She'd honestly lost track. It was difficult to keep track of time when it flew by so quickly. Naruto would have to thank her for that. After all, he made every day exciting. He was with her as the world evolved, broke down, and evolved again. The first few years were obviously difficult. But that was to be expected. It only became easier once Naruto's body had fully transitioned to being entirely composed of her chakra. It was strange at first, but not having to eat, sleep, or do anything else that restricted the human body turned out to be pretty cool. Not that they didn't keep eating and sleeping after that. Just because they didn't have to do it didn't mean they didn't like eating or sleeping. They'd eventually become traveling merchants, spending their days sitting on a cart selling their wares in the towns they passed through. The Akatsuki could never track them down because they were always on the move. After a few decades, the constant fear of being discovered faded away. When they traveled through different villages, they always wore hoods on their heads. People would not be suspicious of their lack of age after years had passed. Naruto had always done his best to stay up to date on Konoha news as they traveled around. The expression on Naruto's face when he learned Sakura had become Hokage after being under Tsunade's tutelage was always a fond memory to look back on. It was even more surprising that Sakura had married Shikamaru. Naruto, on the other hand, never inquired about Sasuke. In his mind, Sasuke was someone he wished he could forget, which he did eventually. That was fine with her. She never mentioned Sasuke. But she had promised herself that if she ever ran into the Uchiha, she would slap him dead on the spot. After all, anyone who dared to hurt her beloved companion deserved to die. Kiyumi would also never forget the times when Naruto received bad news about people he cared about. He was always the first to know when a friend died. He would always make an effort to attend their funerals, usually disguised as a bird or a squirrel, occasionally a fox. During those times, she would be there for him. She'd console him. It was never easy. But she was glad that in their relationship, she was the only one who had to rely on him. She liked the harmony. Naruto had to admit that it was difficult at times. It took him a long time to adjust to immortality and the consequences of living forever. People would perish, but he would not. But he never gave up on making new friends whenever he could. He made an almost unconscious decision that if he could live forever, he would spend it being kind to others. He was noble in that way. One of the reasons she adored him was because of this. Years were ticking away. New Hokages were appointed, wars were fought, and people were rebuilt. They didn't seem to mind. They could block out the rest of the world as long as they had each other. Around the 9th, perhaps 10th war, most of the world's ninja had effectively wiped themselves out. It was truly amusing that a century of tradition ended on its own. Those who were skilled at using chakra to perform techniques eventually died out. People left behind, unable to wage large-scale wars as effectively as they once could, focused on peace and innovation. That was a good thing for them. They would frequently find themselves at the center of a conflict. As technology advanced, they were eventually forced to abandon the merchant cart. More villages sprang up all over the world, eventually becoming towns, and then cities. Their ability to spend their days wandering around became limited as more and more space was taken up. That was unfortunate. She had to admit, she preferred forests to skyscrapers, rivers to factories, and peaceful silence to city sounds. But city life had its charms. Naruto also liked it. She liked what Naruto liked, as corny as it sounded. Most of the time, At least, the elemental nations had evolved into a diverse single-country continent. The various superpower villages that controlled their specific parts of the land no longer existed. But each unique environment did provide the people with something. The Land of Fire became the leader in the lumber and agricultural industries. The Land of Water became the main exporter of seafood. The Land of Earth became the main exporter of precious metals after being cleared of all large rocks. And the Land of Lighting eventually became the center for technology. On the other hand, the Land of Sand. Most of the people who once inhabited that barren part of the world had left now that they had other options for living, and travel had become much easier with the invention of the airplane. It was simple to adjust to modern times. Kyumi and Naruto had assumed the identities of two related orphans. Naruto was allowed to keep his name, but because Kyumi was terrified of anyone but Naruto saying her name, she chose the name Kurumi. Nobody ever questioned them because they both had the same color red hair and eyes. However, there were some bumps in the road. Kyumi had spent the entire day weeping the day the government passed a law stating the legal drinking age, even with proper identification. No one believed she was of legal drinking age. She had lived for 1,000,000 years. She cursed herself for having such a young body at times. Fortunately, she had Naruto to get her some alcohol. Another thing that irritated her about city life was having to tuck her fox ears and tails all the time. The world was more interconnected than it had ever been. It was pretty much all over if there was news of a girl with fox ears and 9 tails wandering around. Working was another thing that irritated her about living in the city. She despised working, but there was no other way for her and Naruto to pay the rent on their apartment. When it comes to work, she'd have to start looking for work all over again. At least, that was the implication of the conversation she was having. "Look, I'm sorry, Kurumi, but we're going to have to let you go," her boss apologized from behind her desk. Kyumi mumbled, What? Why? You yelled at one of our customers today. I'm sorry, but you've been turning away too many clients, so we've decided that this position may no longer be right for you, replied her boss. It's not my fault, they're all morons. Come on, people. That one guy kept asking me to explain the charts to him. Kyumi protested by throwing her hands in the air. Perhaps marketing isn't for you, Kurumi, her boss remarked. I guess not. Kyumi frowned. If marketing forces me to listen to idiotic monkeys talk about stupid things all the time, then it's not for me. With that, she removed her pin, tossed it on her boss's desk, and exited. Ugh. How would she explain getting fired again to Naruto when she got home? All Kyumi could do as she rode the bullet train home was stare at her reflection in the window. There were more monkeys than ever before, as well as probably more idiots. She'd love nothing more than to tear through them with her claws, destroying their cities and devouring them. But Naruto would be irritated. She despised it when he became agitated. When Kyumi looked down at her hand, she felt some of her rage fade away as she saw the simple wedding band on her ring finger. She preferred it when Naruto was happy. Kyumi felt a little nervous as she walked up the stairs to their shared apartment and pulled her keys from her purse. This was, her 5th job loss. To be honest, she wasn't cut out for working. I'm home, Kyumi exclaimed, slightly huffing as she opened the door in front of her. Welcome home, Kyumi, Naruto said, turning his head to smile at her. I feel so very welcomed. Kyumi snorted as she closed the door behind her. Oh, bad day. As he stood up from his computer and walked towards her, Naruto asked. Kyumi nodded as she hung her purse on a hook and ran over to hug Naruto. Bad day. What happened? Naruto inquired, rubbing the top of her head with his hand. Aye. Kyumi began, puffing out her cheeks indignantly as she forced the words out. I got fired again. Naruto chuckled quietly as he looked down at her. Sincerely, Kurumi, why are you so eager to work? I already make enough money writing books, Naruto replied, giving her a warm smile. It's because I feel bad for always making you work so hard for me, dummy. Kyumi pouted. But I don't work that hard. Naruto shrugged. I just spend 5 hours total in a day just writing. Yes, but, Kyumi, there are no buts. To be honest, you should just stay at home with me. I'm much happier and more productive now that you're here, Naruto said as he embraced her, eliciting an embarrassed squeak from her. Why, you're not going to be upset about being the only one working then? Kyumi asked, hesitantly, as she returned her gaze to him. Naruto shook his head and said, absolutely not. It also gets lonely here without you. Don't you have little Miko to entertain you? I mean, yeah, Naruto replied as he drew back to face her. But little Miko still can't talk, so it's kinda like me talking to myself. When it comes to Miko, is she currently sleeping? I'd like to meet her, Kyumi stated as she turned her gaze to her daughter's bedroom. Naruto shook his head again. She actually just awoke. I had just fed her. She has your appetite. To be honest, our hunger. We both consume a lot of food, Kyumi smiled as she corrected herself. Usually, When we eat out, it's you who ends up eating the most, Naruto replied, returning the smile. I can't help it. Modern food is so tasty. Kiyumi blushed. Yeah, could you please go get some of those honey candies from the top shelf for me? I'm unable to contact them, Kiyumi inquired, pointing up at the kitchen cabinets. No problem, said Naruto, as Naruto entered their kitchen to get her the candy she had requested. Kiyumi snapped her fingers, changing her business attire into something more casual before entering her daughter's bedroom. Miko was absolutely adorable, with red hair like her father's or mother's, the same shade of blue-gray eyes, and a pair of cute fox ears. If someone had told her before she met Naruto that she would have a child someday, she would have laughed at them and killed them. But she loved her child now. She adored Naruto in the same way. Her quiet chuckle prompted little Miko to coo and turn her head to look at her mother. She had never thought she had room in her heart for anyone, let alone two. Walking up to her child, Kiyumi gently wrapped her arms around little Miko before carefully lifting her up into her arms. Kiyumi recalled the moment she realized she was expecting a child. Miko the second great destroyer of monkeys, princess of the tailed beasts, descendant of the nine-tailed fox was the name she had chosen for her child. Naruto had persuaded her to simply name the child Miko. He had argued that her chosen name was far too long for the birth certificate, Uzumaki. Miko had a pleasant ring to it. How's little Miko? Naruto inquired as he approached from behind her and wrapped his arms around her stomach. She's doing well, Kiyumi said with a smile. Honestly, I can't wait for her to say her first words, Naruto admitted as he gazed affectionately down at little Miko. She's close to that age. I can't wait either. Kiyumi agreed as she nodded, prompting Naruto to brush a few of her stray hairs to the side. I brought the honey candy you requested, Naruto said, handing her a few wrapped candies. Thank you, Kiyumi replied as she unwrapped one of them and popped it into her mouth. You really like your candy, Naruto remarked with a chuckle. Kiyumi shrugged as she rocked little Miko gently in her arms. What else can I say? Monkeys seem to invent new and delicious foods all the time. This type of hard candy is just one example. I wonder if little Miko will inherit your sweet tooth, mused Naruto as he raised his hand to tickle little Miko's cheek with his finger. Miko giggled in response to his gentle touch. Or maybe your love for ramen. Kiyumi smirked at Naruto as she turned her head. Maybe, who can say? I hope she likes ramen and candies, Kiyumi said, smiling warmly. Alcohol, too. It would be fun to have a drink with my daughter someday. Don't you think it's a little early to be talking about your daughter drinking? Naruto chuckled. I guess I can wait, Kiyumi replied as she gently placed little Miko back into her cradle. After all, I have forever. Well, then, why don't we have some dinner to pass the time, suggested Naruto, prompting Kiyumi to turn around to face him. What do you desire today? Didn't you just buy those 2 steaks? Are they still in the fridge? You want steak tonight, said Naruto, nodding. Kiyumi hummed as she nodded her head. Steak, please, served with buttered corn. Mashed potatoes were also served. All right, said Naruto as he leaned down and kissed Kiyumi on the cheek. Love you. Kiyumi smiled as she watched Naruto leave the house. She looked down at her hand once more, admiring the wedding band on her ring finger. She then returned her gaze to little Miko. Her gaze eventually shifted to where Naruto would have been in the kitchen. Kiyumi couldn't help but smile as her lips curved upward. She truly adored him. She needed to remind him of this more frequently. She gently picked up little Miko again, untucking her ears and tails and using her tails as a pouch. As she walked out of little Miku's room, she noticed Naruto cutting up potatoes. She walked up behind him and embraced him without saying anything. Kiyumi, I adore you. I adore you. I adore you. Naruto looked around. Do I love you as well? What's the deal with all the I love yous? I don't get to say it nearly enough. Then Kiyumi nuzzled her cheek against his back. Every now and then, I get so overwhelmed with love for you and little Miku that I just have to let it out. That happens to me sometimes, too. Naruto chuckled. To be honest, I can see myself loving you forever. I don't have to imagine, Naruto replied, smiling. I know I'm going to love you forever. Dummy, Kiyumi blushed. It's me. I love you, Naruto. I love you, Kiyumi. There was a brief silence. Now return to preparing my steak dinner. Naruto rolled his eyes but continued to smile. Okay, Kiyumi.
This was the end of the series. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you never miss an upload. Till then, we weeb offline.